Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of High Energy Keto Girl. And today's guest is a repeat, Dr. David Harper, who is an educator, researcher, and health consultant. I asked him to come on the show to talk about the coronavirus and how eating a ketogenic diet can have some protective effects. Dr. Harper is the author of The Bio Diet and has studied the impact of diet on human health for many years. Dr. Harper is an associate professor of kinesiology at the University of the Fraser Valley and a visiting scientist at the BC Cancer Research Centre, Terry Fox Laboratory. He holds a Ph.D. from the University of British Columbia and completed a post-doctoral fellowship in comparative physiology at the University of Cambridge. He is on the scientific advisory board of the Canadian Clinicians for Therapeutic Nutrition and is a member of the Institute for Personalized Therapeutic Nutrition. He is an amazing wealth of knowledge, and you're going to want to listen to this episode at least 2 or 3 times. So let's go and say hi to Dr. Harper. Hey everyone, welcome to High Energy Keto Girl, a podcast helping women to age stronger because it is never too late to get fit, be strong, and feel sexy. I'm your host, Tracy Gluhite, health coach and personal trainer and founder of highenergygirl.com. Each week, we will either have a guest interview, which will provide you encouragement or an actionable tip to help you age stronger, or I will do a solo episode. Please also join our awesome Facebook group called High Energy Girls, and I'm looking forward to see you on the inside of that group and hope you enjoy today's show. Guess what, everyone? My book is out. It is a revised and updated edition of a book I wrote 5 years ago called No Frickin' Way, 21 Days to Ditch the Diet and Lose Weight the Keto Way by Loving Yourself to Health. When I first wrote the original book, I was not a believer in the low-carb movement, but after all the years of research I've done, I am sold out for life. In this book, you will learn about all the lies you have been fed, how to engage in loving self-care, how to eat nourishing foods that provide massive energy, why the ketogenic diet is not a fad, how to heal your body through fasting, why you should move your body to get stronger, and how to create an empowering mindset. Start reading now and finally achieve the high energy and positive body image you deserve. Check it out on Kindle, on Amazon. And if you like it, please leave us a review because this will help more people find it. I really want to inspire people to not deprive themselves, but to nourish themselves with loving self-care and amazingly healthy food so that they can age stronger. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it. Hey, Dave, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here again, Tracy. Nice to see you.
Yeah, I love how things are going for you. I've been kind of stalking you and looking at all your posts. And so for the listeners that don't know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, if they heard of me, it may be because of the book that my wife, Dale Drury, and I finished last year. Thank you for being one of the first podcasters to follow up on the release of that book last May. It's called Bio Diet, and people can go to biodiet.org. That's our website. And, some of the things we have there, a lot of resources. Dale's worked tirelessly to collect all of these articles that are not from science because we want to get this at the right tone for people to understand. But there's hundreds and hundreds by category, by kind of health categories to how ketogenic diets can help benefit your health. So enough about that. So I was just at Low Carb Denver, which is an annual conference. It's been going on about 6 years. Put on by Dr. Jeff Gerber and Dr. Rod Taylor. And that's why you can see in the background, if you're watching on YouTube, that's my room for the next week because I've been banished to my office, which is also our bedroom, because I'm in quarantine here. I live in Vancouver in Canada, and when I came home, we have to go into a 14-day quarantine, which then will be followed by who knows how long of self-isolation anyway. But So I was talking there about some of my research, which is looking at the therapeutic benefits of ketogenic diets, and in particular for those women with metastatic breast cancer. That's a study that I'm working with as a very small part of a big team. The team is headed by Dr. Jeff Volek, who I'm sure most of your listeners will know of. He's kind of a rock star in this area and does fantastic science. So he and the team at The Ohio State University are we have a study there, and I work locally here with another rock star named Dr. Gerald Crystal, who's kind of he's kind of one of the real leaders in cancer research in Canada, looking at the effect of diet on cancer. And that's at the BC Cancer Research Centre, Terry Fox Lab. I'm also a university professor. I'm a health educator. I work at the University of the Fraser Valley, and I teach anatomy, physiology, pathology, contemporary health, and so on. So part of what I talked about at the Low Carb Denver was my research, and then part of it was about COVID-19, because there are potentially, I don't want to get people too excited about it, but some benefits to a ketogenic diet that might help with resistance to COVID-19. And I think people should know about that, because while they're at home and getting coached by people like you at home, they can also start thinking a little bit more, be more mindful about what they're eating, because we only get to go out once a week, and so we can be more mindful about our food. And I think now you can start making some of those changes maybe you've been thinking about, and I would like, for those for whom it's appropriate. Ketogenic diets aren't for everyone, but it's something they can consider. And again, we can talk about how that might help with COVID a little bit later.
Okay, cool. That's exactly what I want to talk about. And so I have a lot of questions regarding that. So the first one that I want to kind of lead down is, I believe, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I believe that by strengthening your immunity overall, with a better lifestyle, healthier lifestyle, that you're able to avoid contracting ailments such as COVID-19 or the flu or the cold, or even having cancer cells, form tumors, because, in a strong immune system, they should be destroying those cells or repairing them, so that you're just healthier overall.
Well, I can't agree more. You're absolutely right. I mean, as a physiologist and a scientist, that's exactly right. In fact, for most of us, that's going to be our defense against COVID-19 or any other. Remember, COVID-19 it's novel, but it's not that novel. It's very similar. The virus is called SARS-CoV-2, and SARS-CoV-1 or SARS-CoV was in about 2003. Was a similar virus that infected some people, not too many, mostly in care facilities, and we managed to contain that one. But there are several similar viruses. There are also coronaviruses that give us colds, and something like 20% of colds are caused by coronaviruses. So on the one side, yes, absolutely, having a good immune system is going to protect you from colds and flus and other respiratory diseases and other infectious diseases. That's how it works. And we can talk about sort of our levels of defense in a bit. The reason that this COVID is such a concern is, one, there is no herd immunity. In other words, it's a novel virus, so nobody in the human population has any resistance to it. Although now, anybody who has had it and has recovered should, we're not absolutely sure, but pretty darn sure that they should be resistant to it in the future. So that herd immunity will build just like it does to any other virus. But in terms of the reason that people are succumbing, sadly, well, let's look at two things. There's hospitalizations and there's deaths, because the testing numbers, to me, it only works if everybody's testing the same way and they're testing everybody. So those numbers, I wouldn't pay too much attention to how many people are being tested. What's important is how many people are being hospitalized, because we have to care for those people and they're having respiratory challenges. And then, the people that die. And if we work backwards from that, those that are dying from COVID-19, and yes, you'll hear odd cases of young, healthy people that will die, just like young, healthy people die from flu sometimes. But it is usually a respiratory challenge. So these people are older. That's probably one of the key things. Most of the people that are dying tend to be over 80. They have what we call morbidities, which are other conditions that are causing illness, like diabetes, heart disease, cancer. Maybe they're in cancer therapy. So their immune system is already being challenged by these other diseases, and they don't have much scope for an additional challenge. So people with hypertension, for example, are at higher risk. People with diabetes are at higher risk. And if you have more than one of those, then your risk starts to go up and up and up. So if you have multiple comorbidities, that's another issue. And then, of course, people with respiratory issues, and that can just be from smoking. So for heaven's sakes, if you haven't quit smoking, I don't know, a global respiratory pandemic, if that's not going to convince you to quit smoking, then I don't know. But and anybody with any other respiratory, if you have cystic fibrosis, or if you have COPDs, which are chronic bronchitis or emphysema, or if you're immune challenged. So people that have HIV, people that have other immune, sometimes we suppress the immune system. For instance, cancer treatments can do that. So if you're not one of those group, you're probably going to get this at some point in the next year or 2 years. You're probably going to get something like a cold or a flu, and you're probably going to recover and be fine. The initial SARS, there was some people that have permanent, lung issues, but they have recovered. So what we need to do, what we all need to do, which is what you and I are doing, is sit at home for a couple of weeks and hunker down and prevent the spread of this virus into care centers, into seniors' homes, even at home with our own, parents or grandparents or great-grandparents. We all have to do our part to prevent them from getting ill. Those people with those other conditions and with respiratory challenges and older people. And if we don't, the picture is pretty grim, but if we do, we can slow the rate at which this virus spreads. They call that flattening the curve, so that our medical system can meet that challenge. Because what we don't want is everybody getting sick all at once, because the medical system then can't deal with people who do end up in hospital. Now, if we look at, I talked about people that were succumbing to this. If we look at people that are being hospitalized, this is where young people, I think, have to wake up, because something like 40% of cases in the U.S. are people aged 22 to 54. So these are younger people that are getting pneumonia, essentially, and they need to go in and be treated for that pneumonia in hospital. And so, again, don't think that just because you're young and healthy that you're necessarily immune. Nobody's immune to this thing. But in the end, for 80% of us, our immune system will do its job and will recognize the virus. It will stop us from getting it in the first place. It will stop it from getting a hold in our lungs. And if it does, then it will create the antibodies necessary to clear the disease.
Okay, cool. And so I've been reading, I'm not a news person. I don't watch the news. I'm not like into all of that, just because I know it creates stress for me. But I have had people send me like little things and tips on how to protect yourself. So I guess the first question for you, Dave, is how does the ketogenic diet help protect your immune system?
Yeah, or protect against infection too, which is kind of one and the same thing. So there are a number of different things we can look at. So we'll start off with the basics, and then we'll get a little bit more geeky with the science, if you'd like.
Cool,
but
yeah.
So starting off with the basics is, generally we know anecdotally that people that are on ketogenic diets seem to get less colds, flus, and things that are going around. So we don't have any, we have some ideas about why this might be, but we don't have any, absolute evidence to suggest that. It's just a hypothesis at this point. But it's certainly one that I hear. Do you hear that from your clients, that they're just not getting sick like they used to? Yeah. So number one is, ketogenic diets are very good at addressing the things that cause those chronic diseases we mentioned: cardiovascular disease, cancer, and diabetes in particular. And those are all cardiometabolic diseases. They're metabolic disorders. And ketogenic diets seem for most to be really effective in treating that. And we do have really good, robust science to indicate that a ketogenic diet lowers your risk for heart disease, lowers your blood pressure, controls your blood sugar, reduces insulin resistance, reduces inflammation. And this is this chronic systemic inflammation. And those three things, I don't know if you remember from our book, Tracy, but we had I call them the axis of illness, right? Which is insulin resistance, obesity, and inflammation. And ketogenic diets are very effective at treating all those things. So if you are improving those things, then, by extension, you're reducing your risk of succumbing to something like COVID-19. So that's number one. Number two, because it's so effective at controlling blood sugar, because you're essentially not eating any sugar, you're producing the blood sugar you need in your body, then your blood sugar is regulated and your insulin's regulated. And high blood sugar does suppress the immune system. So for sure, anybody listening out there, now is not the time to be, pounding sugar because you feel bad for yourself because you're sitting at home. You should avoid sugar. And in fact, avoid high glycemic index carbohydrates for sure, which are, the starches and breads and that sort of thing, because that does, we know, suppress the immune system. So again, avoiding that improves your immune response. And then it gets a little bit sort of more interesting. So here's some studies, and we'll talk about them sort of one at a time. First of all, the way this virus works, COVID-19. So it's a coronavirus, which means it has these little receptors all over the surface of it. And this virus, they sort of stick out like one of those little, those little sucker balls you throw at the window and they stick to the window. So that's what it kind of looks like. So the way it works is it gets into your lungs, and it usually gets in because we're touching our face through our eyes, our nose, or our mouth, and through particles. And then it gets into our lungs, and its point of entry to the cells is something called the ACE2 receptor. Now, ACE is angiotensin converting enzyme. So a lot of your listeners that have high blood pressure might be familiar with a drug called ramipril, which is an ACE inhibitor. And so it inhibits the activity, not the presence. But it appears in a study that looked at, it was actually with green monkeys. It looked at the effect of ketogenic diets on this ACE2 receptor. And it seems like those monkeys, at least, that were keto adapted, they downregulated those receptors. In other words, they had fewer of those receptors on the respiratory cells, which means fewer attachment points for the virus, which means the virus has a tougher time getting in, which gives your body more time to react to it. So that was a study that was out a few years ago now, quite a few years ago, in response to SARS, the first of these coronaviruses. There was a study out from Yale in November that showed that ketogenic diets, now it wasn't ketones, it was being keto adapted. So we don't know. In other words, they tried just exogenous ketones and it didn't work. This is with mice looking at influenza virus, which is in many ways similar to the coronavirus. And it's a respiratory virus. It gets in your lungs too. We sometimes think of flu as that, thing you get at Christmas, where you kind of, you throw up and you have diarrhea for a day. That's not flu. Flu is like a dry cough. It's very much like the symptoms: fever, dry cough, aches and pains. That's influenza. And so with these mice, what they're able to show, they used H1N1, which is a very pathogenic virus for mice. And essentially the control group, when they give this virus to them, they all die. The experimental group, where they were keto adapted, they had very good survival rates. And they figure it had something to do, again, with the ability of the virus to attach to these respiratory cells. So there's those two. And then with the ACE2 and ACE2 receptor, it seems that the reason it's downregulated, this is getting even another level of geekiness here. We have three immune responses. So can we just kind of step back and talk about how your immune system works? So
sure. I love it. Yeah.
Okay. So you have basically three different barriers, right? So the first barrier is your physical barriers, like your skin, your mucous membranes, and the secretions of those mucous membranes that try and protect things from getting in. But the world is polluted with bacteria, viruses, and fungus, and so they're going to get in eventually. So then your immune system has to react, or if you get a cut or something like that. So then the next phase is what we call the innate immune system. And this is a series of cells, mostly white cells like macrophages, and the chemicals that they release. And also our host cells' ability to produce these chemicals called cytokines and chemokines. And they provide a general, as we say, non-specific response. In other words, it doesn't matter what got in, whether it's a fungus, a bacteria, a virus, or even a cancer cell. They just try and stop things from getting into the body. And they do that through various defense mechanisms of, secretions and signaling. So one of the signals is this thing called gamma interferon, and it's particularly active when cells are virally infected. So what happens is a virus gets into, typically the way viruses work is, now remember, they're not bacteria, so they're not like living cells like bacteria are. They're little bits of DNA or RNA. The COVID-19 is an RNA virus. They're wrapped in a little protein coat, and then they have a little lipid thing around them. And they get into cells and they kind of hijack the cell's reproductive machinery. So instead of rebuilding new cells and new healthy bits, it just produces viruses and they build up in that cell until they kill the cell or are released, and then they go and infect neighboring cells. And we have lots of viruses. There are very, very few virus-free cells in your body, and most of them do nothing. They're benign, so they kind of live along with us, even though some would argue whether they're alive or not. But then there's these pathogenic ones. They usually come from they jump species. So this one apparently came from bats or something like that. And then they become pathogenic because our immune system isn't used to them. They're not part of our host, our host viruses, or I should say our innate viruses that most of us have. So one of these signals is called gamma interferon. And when a cell becomes virally infected, it sends out this signal to its friends and says, hey, I've just been infected by a virus, protect yourselves. And it's a very powerful signal to do that. So that's called gamma interferon. And when you have a lot of gamma interferon in your system, you will feel sick. It's the gamma interferon that makes you feel sick. So let me ask you a quick question, sort of an aside. And I asked this to the audience, who are mostly physicians actually in Denver. I said, how many people are keto adapted for 2 years or more? 2/3 of the audience put up their hand. How many people have noticed they get less flus and colds? Same people, like at least everybody puts up their hand. So how many people felt like, so this is the same question to you, how many people felt like you were coming down with something, felt really awful, getting maybe chills, aches and pains, and you go, oh man, I'm going to cancel everything tomorrow. And then you wake up the next day and you're feeling fine. Have you had that experience?
Oh gosh, no. I'm really lucky. I've been sick once in the last probably 4 years since I've been keto adapted. And that was from traveling, from an airplane. But yeah. So no, I haven't felt that.
Well, when I asked this audience, again, it was almost all the same people said, yeah, I've had that experience. I said, well, what that is that's the gamma interferon. That's your innate immune system responding to this challenge, saying, uh-oh, we got something coming in. And it's actually that chemical that makes you feel bad. It's not the virus itself. It's that thing that makes you feel bad. And it does that for a reason, to get you to, stay home and like we're doing now and just do nothing, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, and so that's where you get the aches and pains and chills, and it also triggers, indirectly it triggers fever and so on. Now, it turns out that gamma interferon also downregulates these ACE2 receptors. So the gamma interferon seems to be the mechanism by which these receptors for the COVID virus are downregulated. In other words, there are fewer numbers for people who are keto adapted. So what we showed in our lab at the BC Cancer Research Center, we compared just a control group of general people in the public to people who had been keto adapted and going out 6 months in a year. And we looked at the reaction when challenged with a virus. So we actually take their white cells out of their blood. We take some blood, we take the white cells out, and we challenge them with a viral and a bacterial challenge. And we see how they respond in terms of these kinds of cytokines and chemokines that they release. And we found that one of them, there was about 6 different chemokines and cytokines that were upregulated. In other words, more release, a better immune response, if you like. I don't like immune boosting because, you could say arthritis is immune boosting or MS is immune boost. I like immune optimizing, right? So what you want is a hardy response when challenged with a virus or bacteria. So we use E. coli as our bacterial challenge, and we use herpes simplex virus as the viral challenge. And that's interesting. That's the same viral challenge that they also used in this study on the green monkeys to look at the gamma interferon effect. And what we saw was upregulation of a number of different cytokines and chemokines, all of which were highly anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory. And one of them was this gamma interferon. So there we go. It's kind of a tic-tac-toe, a very small, like one human study, very small, uncontrolled. One study on mice, one study on monkeys, but all kind of pointing in the same direction and all supporting the notion that people who are keto adapted, again, not exogenous ketones, but are keto adapted, seem to have this improved resistance to infection and even specifically maybe to this COVID-19 infection. But yeah, and then in general, as you and I know well, people, and again, we agree that ketogenic diets are not necessarily for everybody. There are some people who are contraindicated. You need to talk to your physician about it. But for the 7 out of 8, I figure that it'll help. It's the best thing to reduce your cardiometabolic risk, which will improve your immunity. It's the best to lower and control your blood sugar, which will help with your immunity. And there may even be these antiviral mechanisms that work right at the cellular level that are upregulated. But of course, that's all hypothetical. It's way too early to prove any of this. But I just wanted you and your listeners to know about the science that's being done.
That is fantastic. And then also with the ketogenic diet, many of us do fasting. How does that help?
Similar thing. I mean, fasting is a lot of different things, I've realized. But if we're talking about, there's this sort of daily restricting that eating window, which I think is beneficial. Then there's, sort of multi-day fasts, which I think once in a while are probably okay if you don't exceed 2 days. I'm not, I don't want to get in any fights here, but I'm not a big fan of longer fasts. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And without getting into that too much, because I don't want to stray too far from the conversation, I think these longer fasts can start triggering what we call thrifty genes, which actually lower our metabolism and cause us to store fat again. And we don't want to do that. But in general, the benefits you get from fasting are the same as you get from ketogenic diets. And I think it's largely through the production of the beta hydroxybutyrate, which is the main ketone body produced through fat metabolism. And I think whether, what I always say, whatever works for you. But I think if you're keto adapted, you probably don't need to also intermittent fast. I'm not sure if there's any additional benefit. And of course, we haven't done those studies. So because I think most of the benefit comes from the ketone itself.
Interesting. So the beta hydroxybutyrate is what provides the protective factor. But if you ingest them rather than producing them naturally, then that doesn't show to be, it doesn't work as well. Or at all.
Yeah, it depends what you're looking at. I mean, if you look at the brain, and the brain will use it as a fuel, right? The brain loves to use BHB as a beta hydroxybutyrate, we call BHB. It'll prefer it over glucose. And so there's some great work done by Dr. Stephen Cunnane at University of Sherbrooke showing that exogenous ketones, and he's just using MCT oil, 2 tablespoons a day, actually have significant improvements for people with mild cognitive impairment and even those with Alzheimer's. So, but if we're talking about the sort of hormonal activity of BHB, then I think it's actually the keto adaptation. And you'll get similar benefits from intermittent fasting. I certainly think intermittent fasting is probably a healthy thing for most people as well. I still have some questions about it, but I'm sort of in the keto world. That's what I'm researching and studying, and there are other people that look at intermittent fasting.
Yeah, I kind of do them both, but I find it really helpful when coaching women as far as them learning how to be more mindful eaters instead of just eating by the clock, but eating when their body needs fuel.
Yeah, I think so. And to add to that, I think right after the talk I gave in Denver, Dr. Eric Berg, who you're probably familiar with too, he gave a talk showing some of his clinical experience. And for those that have been on ketogenic diets, have lost some weight and then stalled, from what I gather from Dr. Berg, it seems like the best next approach is to actually try and narrow that daily eating window, even down to what we call OMAD, or 1 meal a day. But when you're eating 1 meal a day, you have to be very careful that you're actually getting all your, a balanced diet, which means all the nutrients and calories that you need in that one meal, which can sometimes be challenging. That's a lot of food to eat all at once. But he's gotten good results from just narrowing that window more and more until it kind of sparks a new round of weight loss. And so that's something as well for those that there are, especially I find with postmenopausal women, they'll lose some weight and then they just kind of stall. Mm-hmm. And it's really, sometimes we might call it a new set point for them, but it can be stubborn and it can take quite a while. And I would just encourage women out there in particular just to stay with the program, try changing your macros around a little bit, and try narrowing your eating window, and that might re-spark some new weight and fat loss. I don't really care about weight. I'm more interested in fat loss, of course.
Of course, yeah. And I noticed though that it's very anti-catabolic, so that they're really losing fat, and it's not the muscle, especially because they, I have them lifting, but, so that's cool. What other tricks have you used or advised other people to use to protect their immunity? Any other life hacks or whatever?
Well, sure. So I think, I think somebody's actually cutting the lawn out here, which is hard to imagine. But sorry about that.
That's all right.
Hopefully he'll go away. I'll go and close the window in a while if that happens. But I guess life goes on, even during a global pandemic. Somebody's got to make some money cutting lawns. So, yeah. Well, at the very start, listen, you need to stay calm. There's very little you can do, you or I can do. We're doing all we can by staying in and staying healthy. You can't solve the world's problems. There's, health problems and economic problems. We're just going to have to let other people sort those things out. So I think this is the time to really practice maybe some meditation. Like, you've got time, right? So maybe get a meditative app and try some meditation. Try to keep things in perspective, and it's that the things you can control, look at those. So what can you do? Well, you can do lots of exercise indoors, and that will for sure help you with stress. It helps you manage stress. So you're not, we don't want a whole bunch of people going out, getting close together, going for runs or anything like that. But for sure, get some exercise, do some meditation, get some sleep. Good health is about sleep, food, and exercise, really. So make sure you're getting adequate sleep, which again, a lot of us aren't working, so it's a good time to catch up on that. So that good sleep hygiene, go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time, get the screens out of your bedroom. That really helps too. And then, the studies have shown that for lifestyle factors, the most important thing is diet. This is from the Lancet, I think 2016, showed the global burden of chronic disease. Diet is more important than all the rest of that. Mm-hmm. So just be careful about what you're eating and how much you're eating. Remember, when you're sedentary, which a lot of us will be more sedentary than we usually are when we're stuck at home, there is a tendency to overeat. And another great thing about a ketogenic diet is it controls those leptin and ghrelin, which are the signals to stop eating or to eat. And so you don't tend to overeat. So only eat when you're hungry. Don't eat when you're bored. And make sure that you're not eating too much sugar for sure. And make sure you're getting good nutrition. And I think get your sleep, get some stress management, and set yourself some goals. Like, this is, here's a little, it's kind of a little secret. It's a little model I have for human health. Okay, so we talked about all those obvious things that I think most everybody know about. But I have this little model that I've had dancing around my head for decades. And that's, if you look at what makes us human as compared to, the other animals and so on, there are certain things that set us apart from the other animals. And I believe that if you focus on those things in your life, if you prioritize those things in your life or in your day, that it will make you healthier because you're being more human. And those things are art. So art, however that manifests, whether it's looking at art or being creative in your own way. Music. So again, I've got a guitar sitting over there that I haven't played for a couple of years. It's time to pick that up again, maybe a keyboard. Learn an instrument, play some music, or listen to music. Don't, I think you're smart to get out of that 24-hour news cycle and just turn some music on instead. And humor. I think humor is very important. Some people, you criticize people for trying to be funny at times like this, but come on, we need a break, right? And humor is really good at addressing stress too. And then language. So symbology and language. I'm looking at the signs behind you. Beautiful girl, you can do amazing things. Like, those are symbols, right? They're actually black and white symbols that have meaning to us, and that use of language in other languages. So it's time to learn a new language, learn some Spanish or some French or something like that. And then the last one is mathematics. And I include in mathematics things like puzzles and games and that sort of thing. So listen, if you're stuck at home and you're doing some creative art stuff and you're listening to some music and you're telling some jokes, and you're doing a little bit of reading and writing maybe, and then you're doing a couple of puzzles, or like your Sudokus or your Ken-Kens or whatever, or crossword puzzles. I love that, crossword puzzles. You'll find those days pass quite nicely, and you'll actually start to enjoy your time at home with your family as much as you can. And then we'll let the rest of the world sort itself out. We can't. Our healthcare workers, listen, huge shout out to our healthcare workers. I don't know about you, Tracy, but here in Vancouver, 7:00 every night, I live in an apartment building. Everybody gets out at the front of their apartment building and we bang pots and yell and we scream. And this is all in support of our healthcare workers. It's really fun to do.
Cute.
And you get to know your neighbors a little bit. And they're They're amazing. They're putting their lives on the line to help us, and I think they need to be supported and rewarded. And so the best thing we can do for them, I don't know if you've seen the signs, you might have seen it on my Facebook, is we're here working overtime so that you can, and we just ask you to stay at home. So I think we should take their advice at times like this. Yeah.
I love those tips. That's your next project, Dave. Are you going to do another book or another project? I think that is so good, like all of it. And, I find that when people have something else to bring themselves pleasure, such as the things on this list, that then they don't need to use food as like comfort. They can find other things to do. And like some of my favorites, I love those logic books. So, I don't know, Mensa. Have you ever tried those logic Mensa books or whatever?
Yep. I'm a Mensa member. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was in Mensa. Well, I mean, I'm not in the thing, but I qualified for the thing with my law school test.
Yeah, there you go.
That's my
Me
only.
too. Yeah, I same with me. It wasn't law school. I think it was med school, but I never went anyway.
To med school.
Like, yeah, you qualify if you get a score high enough on those aptitude tests. Yeah.
Yeah. So I always that's what I tell my kids. I have to have a claim to fame, and I want to learn language and then humor. Do you know who J.P. Sears is?
No, I got a J.P. Sears. I'm writing that one down.
Oh my gosh, he is so funny. He has these very dry videos that he does that he pokes fun of current situations.
Okay.
And he did one on the toilet paper thing. Oh my god.
He's not an Aussie guy, is he? Because I saw one, it was an Aussie guy doing kind of a poem about the toilet paper thing. It was pretty funny.
No,
okay.
He's like, oh my gosh, he's so funny. But I mean, I like literally laughed out loud. So these are great tips. And then check out that sign. Do you see the yellow one?
I have my sassy pants on today. I like that too.
That's my favorite one. I have so many good ones. I love the unicorn because I do Reiki and Qigong and a lot of energy work. And it says, I lost the keys to my imagination and now my unicorn won't start.
That's great.
That's
fantastic.
cool.
Yeah.
So
you have to live your life, right? I mean, we'll get through this. We'll get over it. Sadly, some people are going to pass away, but this is what happens. This is the uncertainty of life and biology. Is there are always pathogens out there, and some of them, when people are immune compromised, will take their lives, and we do the best we can to prevent that from happening and to help people live lives that are as long and healthy as they can. I think that's what you and I are doing. Is let's see if we can get everybody to the point where we don't have these comorbidities the next time, where we do address, rather than just taking pills and going on leading your life the way you do, that you actually make those lifestyle changes that you should make, that you should make. Quit smoking, lose some weight, get some exercise, get some sleep, manage your stress, all those things. And then through diet, you can, I think, reduce your risk of these things by about 70%. And there will be many silver linings of this COVID-19 crisis. And I think one of them is we'll all take a really hard look at our lives and what they mean and what we want to get out of them. And I think we'll stop going through the motions and we'll start truly living our lives again. And I think that will be wonderful. And I think some of those other things that make us human will help with that.
Yeah, that's cool. I agree. So tell me something. Do you have another project you're working on now that your book has been so successful? What's next for you?
Yeah, well, we're still working on the book. I mean, that's it's still getting lots of media and actually, unfortunately, I had to cancel a whole bunch of conferences that I had lined up because of this. But more speaking engagements. I hope to meet some of you out there. So that's still going, and my co-author Dale Drury, she's working very hard on through our website. So biodiet.org is where you can keep track of those things. I do. I have a couple other. I mean, this is the time to write a book too. I was going to post something on Facebook saying, hey, what's your book? Because everybody's got a book in their head, and I've written a book, and this is what you have to do, folks, by the way, is you have to sit at home when everybody else is out there having fun, and you have to fire all your friends for about a year if you want to write a book, because you've written one. You know how challenging it can be to make that time. So now that we're stuck inside, and if you want to be creative, pull those ideas out of your head and write your book. So I do have some ideas. I mean, one is that idea of looking at human health through a bit of a broader perspective. So instead of just nutrition, sort of some other factors. And But another is I'm really quite involved with design thinking and innovation and leadership and teamwork and that sort of thing. It could be applied anywhere in life. And it's in fact some of those principles what I applied when I wrote BioDiet to look at the root cause of disease. But I'm really interested in design thinking, which comes out of, you're in California, comes out of Stanford. And the applications of that to institutions, businesses, people, and so on. And so I think if I write my next book, it might be in that. I'm sort of an eclectic person. I wear a lot of different hats and I do different things. So some of it is in that innovation space as well.
Oh, that's cool. And then your website, biodiet.org.
That's right. Yep.
And are you on social media and stuff if people want to follow you?
Yeah. So the hashtag is #BioDietBook. And then on Facebook, it's Dave Harper. And, once you get a tag on Facebook, you can't really change it, right? So, so I had a tag on LinkedIn, which is, I think it's Dr. David G. Harper, because that's like my professional name. And then my sort of friends and family name was just Dave Harper. So I'm Dr. David G. Harper on LinkedIn, and I'm just Dave Harper on Facebook, and I've got some room for more friends. If you're interested and you want to connect with me, please do. And then #BioDietBook, and then the website's the main access. And by the way, our book we always had it available as an ebook as well as a hardcover book. We've had to reprint the hardcover. It's not a hardcover, I should say, the soft cover, the hard copy, I should say, in this techie world. So the paper version, I think it's $15 in the States, and there's still copies left. We've reprinted that 4 times, so that was exciting. It did make number 18 on the bestsellers list globally, which is kind of fun for about one day.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, at one point we were right there in between. I took a little screen grab of it. We were between Michelle Obama's book and the Mueller report, so that was pretty exciting. And then we just did in the fall. We went into studio and we did an audio version because I just love audiobooks. I multitask whether I'm driving long distances or in the gym or whatever. So we have an audio version, and Dale and I actually read the book, and we had a lot of fun with that. And so that's another option for folks if for some reason we run out of the paperback copies, you can do the audiobook. And one of the things we did, the format we used, it's on all the available platforms, is we actually, the arrangement we have is so that it was available in schools and libraries as well. So hopefully your school or library should have the audio version, or they can order that as well.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Well, hey, I just want to thank you again for coming on the show.
So much fun.
I really, really enjoy listening to intelligent minds, and you definitely are at the top of the list. I really like hearing all the geeky science, even though I'm going to have to listen to this a couple more times to really absorb it all in full transparency. But thank you. I appreciate you a lot.
Oh, and I just love the work you're doing, trying to help people have more meaningful, healthier, happier lives. Tracy, you're doing great work, and I love your podcast, and keep it up, and we'll all get through this together. And last word is just for everybody out there, just assume that you have this virus and behave accordingly, and we'll get through it as quick as we can.
Awesome. Okay, how many more times are you going to have to listen to this show? Wasn't it amazing and so encouraging that we can actually protect our immunity primarily with our fork and eating bacon? I'm sure none of you are hating on that. So for complete show notes, head on over to highenergygirl.com/show. If you like the show, please head on over to iTunes, leave us a rating and review, and share the episode with a friend to encourage them and show them how they can improve their immunity as well. All right, you guys, go out and make it a great day and be safe out there. This podcast contains the opinion and thoughts of its host and guests. It is intended to provide helpful and informative material on the subjects covered. All statements made on the podcast have not been evaluated by the FDA and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. If the listener requires professional assistance or advice, please contact your personal medical doctor. Both host and guest specifically disclaim any responsibility for any liability, loss, or risk, personal or otherwise, which is incurred as a consequence directly or indirectly of the use and application of any of the contents of these episodes. Like I said, this is my opinion and I could be wrong.